have, and she's a mother of 3 fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Doesn't that sit well with what we're talking about? Man. As she was talking, as Bobby was talking, I kept on going back to the scripture. I'm like, okay, this is why. Your lives have purpose. You know, even as the different seasons that we go through, like the trees, you're going to keep standing. You know, the books can't tell you why you're here. But Bobby also talked about the roots. Let me tell y'all a little bit story. It might shift our emotions just a little bit, but I have a little funny story about my experience taking care of a mini tree. So I received a plant. You know, a tree is a plant. Started with the seed in the ground, roots, sprouts up, all of that great thing. I received a plant a few months ago. I'm not going to say what kind of plant it is, because if I do, then the person that gave it to me, they may hear the story and realize that, you know, what happened. But anyhow, so I received the plant for the first time a few months ago. I never really had to take care of a plant before, right? So I solicited help from my family. You know, I have a busy, my life is kind of like I'm shaking and moving a lot of the times, but moving with purpose. Grateful, God, and not taking anything away from what you're doing. I received my little plant. I said, Grandma, sometimes I'm gone and I'm like, please, can you water my plant for me, right? I'm grown. Why can't I water my own plant? I will forget days at a time about watering the plant. But I have Grandma who will water the plant for me, nurture the plant for me. And then there are times when Grandma isn't there to water the plant. So then now a whole nother week goes by. There's no Grandma to water the plant, and I'm not watering the plant. But when I come back to look at the plant and I remember the plant, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's still standing. It's still looking strong. And the reason why it's still looking strong is because of the nurturing that it was getting. You know, everything that was being done without me doing it at the roots. Bobby referred back to her roots. Thank God for all that he does and everything that we're doing to nurture our plants. So right now I just want to bring up our next speaker, which is Pastor Victoria, which is going to shift it just a little bit to talk about the book within you.
Hi, everyone. All right, so let me make a first announcement. You are okay. You still processing. I'm processing. But what we're experiencing also is we're experiencing the power of story. We're experiencing a power, and in the church, we say the word testimony, right? But we experienced the power of story, and we experienced it a few different ways. We had one young lady that came and painted a picture where if you closed your eyes, you were almost there with her. And then we had another young lady to come and really painted a picture of survival and resilience. And we can all relate to it in one way or another, right? And so one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is about publishing a book. But you first have to talk about story, because guess what? You can't publish a book until you got content. And content is story. And when I heard the theme about the tree, what I thought about was, you know, if you cut a tree open, in the bark, you see all of these different lines. They're called tree circles. And they're there because every year, trees grow or are able to self-create another outer barking or outer protective covering every single year. And so when you cut that limb in half and you look at those circles, if you count 15 circles, that tree's been there 15 years. So when you cut that tree, you can tell a little bit about not only how old the tree is, but you can also, with the right training and background, you are able to tell what the environment has been like around the tree. Has it been raining? Has it been snowing? Just what else has been growing around? It tells you a lot about it. And I think you were so right when you said that all of us are like trees. We're all unique, and we really all do have a story. Some of us, we're really led to write. We really want to write, but we begin to think, what in the world am I going to write about? What is my story? Do I even have a story? And the answer to that is generally yes. But how we tell our story is going to be different. So I think the first thing I want to share with you is how important it is to be you. How important it is to tell the story based on who you are. And I didn't prepare any jokes for today, but one will probably come up. Because I just like to laugh, you know, and when I tell a story and how I tell a story, it's going to be in that realm, and it's going to be a little bit transparent. But you all have one, and when we talk about publishing a book, for most of us, generally, that first book is about our story. Anybody testify? Anybody writing in here? Anybody have begun? And so when you first write, it's kind of personal, right? It's a little bit about your story. Usually we want to say, oh, I need to tell you what I've been through. I've been through it, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. So that's generally how we tell our story. I was pretty much the same way. I have written a few books. My first book, I started it off, I just want to share this with you with this little phrase, and it says, a coming of age. If we are to come of age spiritually, we have not merely to conform outwardly to outer rules, but to change the inner man too. And this is by a person called Emmett Fox, and it's from his book called The Sermon on the Mount. And so, for me, about 2005, schedule shifted for myself and my husband. I worked 9 to 5 then. I'm still kicking those bricks now. But I know, praise God, right? Yes. But his schedule changed. And so I went from doing the regular stuff, you know, in the evening you come home, you fixing dinner, you sitting down. We used to look at Kung Fu. I know that probably dated me some, but we would look at Kung Fu on TV every evening. We had our little routine. But when his schedule changed, so did our routine change. And so I spent a lot of time at home by myself. I was about 38 years old. I was very active in ministry. However, I wasn't there 7 days a week, not that particular time. But I was very active in ministry, but also just struggling with some things personally. I was struggling with infertility. I was struggling with some things I was experiencing in ministry. In the midst of all of that, in this quiet time is when I started having these conversations with the Lord, because I'm trying to understand what in the world is going on. You know, why am I feeling like I'm going in and out of just depressed sometime, happy sometime, what's happening? And so I just began to write, because writing for me helps me to figure things out. It helps me to see things a little bit clearer. But I never sat down to write a book. I sat down, I was journaling. Do any of you journal? Who journals in here? Okay, so we're talking about writing and the book and the story of you. So that's got to be assignment number one. If you're not journaling, you got to start journaling. So I began to journal. I began to write. And some might say I'm kind of prideful, but I can promise you everything in this journal, it was about me. I didn't write about anybody else. I didn't write about what I thought anybody else had going on or what anybody else was doing to me or any of that. I just wrote about me and a lot about how I was feeling because I was trying to understand it. As you get older, things change in your body. And it's funny because at 38, I thought things changed. Now, I'll be 57 in a few days. Things really changed. And that's why these settings also are so powerful, because we need to sometimes be able to talk to people about what we're experiencing, about some of the things that are changing. Number one, so we can laugh together. And number two, depending on what day, you may have to cry together. You may have to complain a little bit together. But it's all bringing about some kind of understanding. So I didn't have people in my life at that time to talk to, and my mom was deceased. So I'm just writing and writing and writing. So this went on from 2005 to 2010. By 2010, thank you, Lord, I was a little bit better, but it was a process, right? And writing is just that. It's a process. Writing a book, if that's what you're writing, it's all a process. And so it was at this time in 2010 that I heard the Holy Spirit say, now release it. And as I even think about it today, I remember seeing myself like literally closing the cover of a book and putting it in someone's hand. So I didn't sit down to write a book, had never thought about writing a book. But I learned what writing did for me. It was therapeutic. And I know African Americans, they don't like words like therapy and counseling and stuff like that. But truth is, number one, we all need some of that in our lives. And writing is therapeutic. And so that's what it was for me. And so I took about 6 months then, because I knew I had to show what I had just written to other people. I took about 6 months to fine tune it, get it together at a point to which I thought it was presentable. I did that and then released that first book. So I think the first point I want to make about this today is that it's not even about a book. But writing, number one, it is therapeutic. And the other thing is what you're writing may not be a book. I've talked with many people and they say, I've been writing on this and it's been 7 years, it's been 10 years. And they're focused on writing a book, but what if it's not? What if it's a screenplay? What if all along the time you should have been blogging or journaling? Or what if your writing is like informative person for information? What if the purpose really was for you to be creating a newsletter for your community to deal with the issues that you saw going on in your community? You were telling me a few minutes ago of things that you were thinking about young women in your community. And you know, we got to be more creative with how we do what we do so that we can have the time we need to take care of self. But one of the many ways to get information out is in writing, but the book is not the only form. So, after I released the first book, I didn't want to stop writing, because then I was like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm enjoying it, but I was afraid I'd get too busy at work. So I made a commitment to myself, and I said, I am going to start a blog, and I'm going to write at least one thing weekly. And I did really good. I did that for about a year and a half. Consistent, had a mailing list out, sent the blog through there, worked out fine. And it was after about probably month 8 or 9 that someone literally came to me and said, I've been reading your blogs, your articles, they are so great. You should compile them and put them in a book. Guess what? I had never thought about that. So once again, I was writing kind of for me, writing some of the lessons that I was learning in life. And here again, someone gave me the idea. They said, compile them and put them in the book. That's exactly what I did. That is how the second book came along. So, one more time on this first major point. Write. Don't worry about trying to write a book. Write. Don't worry about who may see or trying to write it in a way so that if other people see it or if other people read it, they might think some kind of way. Don't worry about any of that yet. Sit down and write. Point number 1. Y'all got it? Yeah. So the interesting thing is ain't nobody taking no notes. So y'all won. Right. Okay. So look, that's not even about how important what I'm saying it is, but it's really about you writing. Because when you start writing, you're going to take every opportunity to write. If you don't, when you try to schedule it, like I'm going to talk about next, when you sit down at home and try to start writing, it's going to feel foreign to you. And especially today, in a time where a lot of times we're on computers, and I even understand that in our schools now, they don't even teach our kids cursive writing anymore. So they don't write in cursive, therefore they can't read it. No. Right? Okay. So also, you know, when I write here. Now my background is IT. I've been in IT for 30 years. But I write here. So I want to also stretch you and say, when you write, you don't have to be sitting at a computer. You don't have to have the latest computer. You don't have to be at a computer at all. get you a journal. I have some for sale today. That's like, I'm just slipping that in. So get you a book and a pencil with the eraser on it and sit down and write. You have something to say. I can look at every one of you in here today, and I know that you have some godly wisdom that you need to share. Somebody needs to hear. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your story of survival, but it might just be a lesson learned, something you learned with your children, something that you learned in marriage. But it is something that can benefit someone else in some way if you'll sit down and you'll put it in written form. The other thing that I want to say is you want to consider, we talked a little bit about what you're writing. Let me make one more point for you. So let me follow up here. How many of you have thought about writing a book? Several, okay. And so I gotta ask this question right now. Are you writing? Are you writing at all? You write some? Are you writing at all? I mean, is that write a little bit. Okay. And so sometimes we struggle with writing. Yeah, we struggle because again, we sit down and here's what happens when you write on a computer. So you start up Microsoft Word. First of all, you have a Windows PC. It takes forever for it to load. You get Microsoft Word started. You get a few pop-ups because you know you got an internet running in the background and you kind of got Facebook going. So you got all that going. So you've been there about 20 to 30 minutes now. You haven't written anything yet. And then you write a sentence or a title, and then you're trying to figure out what thought does it need to be. Should I make this bold? Should I underline it? And you have all of 3 words on the page. That's the other reason for not writing on your computer, but just getting a journal. Because you can't do all that fancy stuff on here. It is what it is. If you want it bold, you got to push the pencil down or pen down harder. Nothing else you can do. So I want to talk about a few things that you can do to actually help with your writing. Number one, if your goal is to write, you have to create a schedule for it. It has to become a priority in your life. You got to cut out time for it. So it's the same with exercise, it's the same with writing, it's the same with meal prep. Whatever priority you give to it, that's just how it's going to happen, right? That's how it's going to occur. So you have to make a schedule for it, literally, using a calendar. Use a tool and say that every day I'm going to write at least an hour. Or every week I want to be sure that I have put 3 hours of writing in. And then I'm going to tell you how important it is to write down what it is you're committed to. What we tend to do is we say it, we got it for ourselves, we don't share it with anybody else because then they may hold us accountable. Yes, they may come back and ask us, so how's it coming? How's the book coming? And so like all of you today, like Anita, and I know Lee, and I saw Nat, and I saw a few other hands, so I'm trying to get your face in my mind because I'm going to come back and ask you, how's it going? What's happening with your writing? And we would be surprised how far accountability goes to help us get done what we're trying to do. One of my most favorite stories that has to do with accountability and writing is when I got probably 6 weeks out from releasing my first book, I just got scared. I got scared. I guess I can't put anything else to it. I got scared. And so I froze. I couldn't do anything. This particular day I'm at work, I pick up the phone, I call a friend, and this is all I could get out. She didn't answer from speaking to the voicemail. I need you to help me get this book out of me. If I don't, I'm going to die. And I hung up the phone. I hung up the phone. That's all I can say. But that's just where I was. That's how I was feeling. Never experienced anything like that before. So she calls back, and God bless her. She said 4 words. What do you need? She didn't say, what you mean you gonna die? She didn't say, what book? Because I don't even think she knew I was writing. But she simply said, what do you need? And it was funny, I knew what I needed. I knew what I needed to finish. But I didn't have the discipline, and that I needed just because fear had overtaken me at that particular time. So we met, and I showed her what I needed to get done, and so she starts putting things on the calendar for me. And here I go. I can't do that on Wednesdays because I have to be at Bible study. I can't do that. I can't do that on Saturdays because I had this whole list of things, all these reasons why. And one of the things that she said, it was so powerful. She said, this is not for forever.
All right.
We're talking about maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And so what I thought was going to be almost like a whole rearrangement of everything that I was doing, that because I spent time there meant I was putting the priority over my writing, it was like it was going to be forever. But when she said that, and then when she really kind of like a sergeant, so somebody called somebody goat. I don't know why you refer to them that way, but usually those kind of words are like, because they're going to like, say it like it is. This is the deal. And this is what you said you want. This is what you're going to have. Why did you call me in the first place? So, she got me straight and reminded me that I came to her to say, God said, release this book. So it is not about me, especially at this point. It wasn't about me anymore. I listened to her. And 6 weeks later, I came home from work, and I could see my porch, when I drive up on the outside, and there was this box.
Oh, wow.
And there was that book. So I sat down at the end of the driveway for a while. I just kind of teared up. Thank you. I went up there, I opened the box, kind of going in the door for me. I'm trying to open the box, get in the door. I sit down at the table. I look at it. I didn't really read through it because God knows by that time I had read through it so many times. I knew what it said. I rubbed the cover a little bit, and then it was funny. Then I put it down on the table. Nobody else was home. I went and got in my bed, and I slept for hours. So it was really like I had given birth. Now, granted, I haven't had any children in the natural, so that's the closest I done got. But I tell you, I was exhausted, and I slept forever. So while I'm saying this, let me publicly say thank you again to her because she's here with me today, and that's Valerie. And thank you to her. And you need a Valerie in your life. You need, I'm not calling her a goat, but you need like that spirit around you to push you and to hold you accountable to the things that you need to do. One of the challenges that we usually have with writing, but with other things in our life too, is we try to do it by ourselves. While I was trying to write this book by myself, it was not coming. Yeah. It was not coming. Not to mention, I'm one person. Yes. And there are a lot of components I'm going to talk about in a moment to actually writing and then publishing. I needed some help. But it was like I was trying to do it. You know how you you're writing something you don't want nobody to see on your paper. So I had all of this going on. And really, it was extending the time. And listen, when God tells you to release something, don't think you got forever. Don't think you forgot. When he tells you to do something, don't think you have forever. If you play around too long, he will remove the assignment. Because you can miss the intended targets. Wow. So whatever story, whatever I was saying in that book, somebody needed to hear it during that time. And it was a word and a lesson and learning for that day. Today is a new day. Yeah. I still my book, I still promote it, but can I tell you what? It had a different effect in that day. Because it was for that day. That's the other reason that if you really know, if you really feel that you hear God saying, it's time to write, whatever it is, it's not about you anymore. And it is about him wanting to work through your physical vessel in this earth realm by way of his spirit to release something into the earth. It's part of the movement of the kingdom in the earth. And when you slow around with it, I'm going to have to get on you now. When you slow around with it, when you mess around with it, it's having an effect. He's watching, he's seeing, and there's something that he's trying to accomplish in each one of us. So, get you a Valerie, and then listen. Listen to the Valeries in your life. Sometimes we ask people to do something. I want you to make sure you get on me. I want you to hold me accountable. If I don't do it, and then people try to do that, and then we get all kind of attitudes with them. We don't listen to them, you know. So get you a Valerie. Make sure that you're listening. Allow yourself to receive what is pouring in, what's being poured into you. And if this project, and it will, changes your schedule or your life for a period, be okay with that and realize it's just a season. Right? It's just a season. Things can get back to where you thought you wanted them to be after that. And sometimes, because we are changed so much when we write, when you write and you come back and you read it a few months later, a year later, sometimes it doesn't even seem like you wrote it yourself. We are changed so much in the process, you might discover that when you finish, you're not even trying to go back to the old schedule again, because you are transformed. And that's why, even in that process of writing that book, I call it a coming of age. I was growing up, I was maturing because of the inner work that was going on while I was writing the project. I never intended any of that, but that's what happened in the midst. So you're going to create a schedule. You're going to get you a Valerie. Write their name down. And then take a moment to create an outline of your book. So what is it that you want to talk about? So whoever is writing, what is it that you're going to talk about? Give me a thing. What you writing about, Anita?
I was going to write about my business journey.
Okay. So she's writing about her business journey. So she is going to maybe start jotting down the 2 titles. And listen, you don't have to wait to write the book till you have the name of it. You don't have to do that. Generally, you will change that name several times in that process, okay? So she's writing about her business journey. The next step, what are some of the things that you want to talk about? What are some main topics you feel like you want to cover? What's important? What has been important about that business journey? Just give me 4 things. Come on. When you leave here, you're going to be ready to write.
Come on, record. Give me a second.
You recording. I thought she was going to her notes on the phone. I was going to say, this is really good. Okay, so what are some of the main topics?
So really and truly, my design of my book, you guys, is really through, it's talking about like my internal, the emotional aspect of going through, like starting a business, stopping a business, and coming back and pushing through and persevering, and relating it with each week that I have my coaching calls, with my business coaching calls.
Okay.
So I was
are you coaching or are you being coached?
So Sean is coaching me.
Coaching you.
So my plan was to outline it based off of whatever the topic of discussion is for that week, and related to my journey each week and what has transpired in my life, what made me make the changes that I needed to make.
Okay. So your main topic is about what your journey was in starting and developing a business, but it was also about what needed to be developed on the inside of you to be able to walk in this as an entrepreneur and as a leader in your business. Okay, so you got those 2 aspects. Then, so you're going to ask yourself next, well, what questions do you think people want to know? What have people asked you? You can think about that, really. What have people asked you about your business? Often when we share people, I have my own business, they ask you what you do, but then they kind of go in to another place, because usually they've been thinking about it too. If I say, has anybody here never thought about starting a business? Would anybody raise their hand? You never thought about starting one? Now, what about now? Okay. I just thought I'd check. But so you have another probably 20 or so women in here that if they haven't done it, they've thought about it. And so you might even take a saying like this and say, well, what are some of the questions? And that's what you begin to answer, and those begin to become the subtopics in your book. So before you try to write pages and pages and pages, think about what you're going to write about. That process in and of itself will stir you so much on the inside. And when you write that down, your main topic or topics, and what are some of the questions you think people want to ask you, and some of the questions you'll answer, you'll be well on your way to beginning to write. Okay? Here's the other thing that's going to help you with your writing. Set a deadline for yourself to even have the first copy of your book in your hands. Can I share how we did with Nalan's book? So we know that Nalan has his conference every year. So we met probably in March or April, I think. And she says, well, my conference is in October and I want to have the book. So that became the deadline of when the book needed to be complete. And I'm not talking about complete on my computer. When conference time came, the book needed to be, as you see it right here. So that became her deadline. She had her physical date. We literally took the calendar and said, okay, let's backtrack. We filled in everything from, you got to allow time for shipping. You know, you have to allow time, even after you order your first couple of copies of the book, for you to do another review. And then we backtracked from there. And with that, we were able to see, okay, this is what needs to happen at least every 2 weeks up until that point for you to meet your goal. But you can't be afraid to set a deadline. You can't be afraid to set a goal even for your writing. Typically, we don't do it and we don't set the goals because we're afraid we're not going to meet them and then we're going to feel bad. Again, it's just like exercising, and I guess I'm talking about that today because I'm trying to get back in the gym. And Lee helped me this morning, and I shared it with her on purpose because she goes every morning, like at 2 a.m. or something. I don't know anybody else who does that. I'm like, you know, sometimes for whatever reason you get up, you're gonna get up early, you get up to pray. You know, you're gonna put some music on your phone, then you see something on Instagram. And you get distracted, you do, right? It's always a post from Lee in the gym. So either way, I say, God, you still talking, you know. So, yes, you are inspiring. But she told me this. I'm like, Lee, gosh, I'm trying to get back in the gym, and I had all these things, and I'm trying to figure out which day I'm gonna go. Da, da, da. She said, don't think about it. Just do it. Get your clothes, pack your bag, keep it packed up, and just do it. And women, oh my gosh, we overthink things all the time, don't we? Yeah. And that's where your Valerie is going to help in your life. So you have to know, this is another reason that you have to understand your circle around you. So when I called her, I didn't call her just because she was a friend. I knew which friend I needed to call. Mm-hmm. I knew which friend was going to really hold me accountable, which one was going to get on me, and which one was going to let me say what I had to say, but then she was going to come right back and say what I asked her to do in the first place. Okay? So don't be afraid to set your deadline, do it with the calendar, and you can work backwards. Right? We almost done. That's point number 3. Point number 4, and I mentioned this a little earlier. You need a team for your writing. Stop trying to do it by yourself like we as women kind of do everything else in our life. We try to do it all by ourselves. Don't try to do it by yourself. It's much easier with your team.